Hello everyone.
Yes, 2 years ago, Mia was here for the Running Wild album ranking, which was one of the most successful album rankings on my channel. So I guess you guys are happy to see her again.
My pleasure.
Generation Nothing was a failed attempt to make a more modern metal church album in 2013. Many 80s metal bands came to a point in their careers where they considered modernizing their songwriting, in this case with more open thrash influences. However, the faster songs aren't the better ones to me. Jump the Gun and Hits Keep Comin' are my favorite songs on this album. They are a bit more melodic. Generation Nothing was the last album with Ronnie Munro. Mike Howe would get back in the band afterwards. My favorite songs are Crawling to Extinction with its pounding rhythm, Breathe Again with some great guitar playing, and the dark and menacing Deeds of a Dead Soul. But altogether there aren't as many outstanding songs as on other albums. Damned If You Do is basically a good mixture of aggressive numbers like Rot Away and more relaxed material like Monkey Finger and Out of Balance. The previous album 11 had the benefit of being the long-awaited return of Mike Howe to metal church. Its aim was the revival of the past, while the following Damned If You Do was eyed a bit more critical, as now some new ideas were asked for and it struggled to fulfill the high expectations. By the Numbers, for example, is a song that would have fit on the Human Factor, but with its repetitive chorus, "You're living by the numbers," it's not the most exciting track here. So altogether, Damned If You Do is just an okay album and placed a bit further down in my ranking. After Mike Howe passed away, I was sure that this was the end of metal church. They had tried David Wayne, reunion with David Wayne, Mike Howe, reunion with Mike Howe, and another singer in between hadn't worked as well as either of them. To my surprise, metal church soldiered on with singer number 4 Mark Lopez from Ross the Boss Band and gave us the new album Congregation of Annihilation. It's possibly the heaviest metal church album and surely doesn't lack energy, an attempt that deserves respect. The current rhythm section with Steve Unger and former Wasp drummer Sted Howland does an excellent job here. In several songs, for example the title track, it's a bit obvious that Lopez is imitating David Wayne a little too much, but it's with the best of intentions, and you also find songs like Say a Prayer with 7 Bullets, which is clearly distinguishable from old metal church style. The lyrics for the title song read as if they are written for Black Sabbath. Despite the title, metal church are actually taking us a bit deeper into the dark here. Mirror of Lies deserves to be mentioned, a catchier number. The 10-minute epic Temples of the Sea has got some harmonies unusual for the band. The remake of Watch the Children Pray was a tribute to the recently deceased David Wayne and very well done. Pretty cool and interesting album. Before this album, I met Kurt Vanderhoof for an interview at a time when metal church was still in hiatus. You find that interview on my channel. Masterpeace, with the return of original singer David Wayne, evoked huge expectations, and while some say it disappointed, I'd rather say it only partly succeeded. We get some great songs like Sleeps with Thunder, Fall Down, and my favorite Sand Kings, which make the album worth listening. I did a lyrics video for Sand Kings a few years ago, which you also find on my channel, if you want to check out that song. I'm glad I saw them twice on stage in 1999, first at Wacken and then on a headline tour with Thunderhead, because it was the last opportunity to hear songs from the first 2 albums live with David on vocals. Rest in peace. A thoroughly good album from the first to the last track, my favorite songs being Suffer Fools, No Tomorrow and Signal Path. Shadow is cool too. The comeback album with Mike Howe was a positive surprise after the first half of the tenor years hadn't been the band's best. 11 sounded a lot like the good old Hanging in the Balance, putting more emphasis on the melodies again, which I had missed on scruffy albums like Generation Nothing. This is probably the most controversial place of my ranking. The critics praised Blessing in Disguise, like Metal Hammer magazine, who made it their album of the month. Strangely enough, I never really liked it, except Fake Healer, which is probably my all-time favorite Metal Church song. But songs like Cannot Tell a Lie or Anthem to the Estranged never really clicked with me. Blessing in Disguise was a kind of intermediate album, not the classic Metal Church of the first two albums anymore, while not arriving yet at the groovier and earthbound style of The Human Factor, which would fit Mike Howe better than this album, I think. The first album with Ronnie Monroe on vocals has a great A-side with a fast Leave Them Behind, followed by the title song which allowed Ronnie to demonstrate his high screams, Hero Soul with its great guitar harmonies, and the darker Madman's overture, keeping up the Metal Church bandwidth very well. And the rest doesn't disappoint either, like the groovy Cradle to Grave. I think this remained the best contribution by Ronnie to Metal Church. Released in 1991, The Human Factor was probably the best Metal Church could do at the time to stay relevant. Many 80s metal bands attempted similar new ways and failed. The album deserves an extra point just for the thoughtful lyrics. Read the song texts for In Mourning or the title track, for example. The sound is rather dry and drum-orientated, almost produced like a thrash album. Producer Mark Dodson also worked with bands like Anthrax and Suicidal Tendencies, and I think in songs like Date with Poverty you can hear that. Metal Church now wrote groovier songs than ever, for example, In Due Time. Also, the band picked contemporary subjects instead of power metal fantasy stuff, and they adapted a more aggressive attitude. The Human Factor is a fine album with a real development, not standing still with the same 80s sound. This CD was released in Japan several months before the rest of the world, but I picked up the expensive Japanese import, although the cover artwork was atrocious. Who cares, while Metal Church provided one of the most essential heavy metal albums of the 90s, just when the grunge wave swept away everything in its path. I loved songs like Conductor, No Friends of Mine or Down to the River. In opposite to the trends of alternative, crossover and industrial, Metal Church created what was arguably their most melodic album. Take Losers in the Game or End of the Age, for example. I'm glad I saw no less than 4 shows of the following tour, because with the songs from the new album as well as classics like Start the Fire in the setlist, I think Metal Church never were better live. That they split soon afterwards for several years was a huge loss. The first album includes 2 Metal Church classics, their namesake song and Gods of Wrath. I also love Beyond the Black and Hitman. Since the album was still a bit short, Metal Church spontaneously recorded a cover of Highway Star on the last day at the studio, as Kurt Vanderhoof told Rock Hard magazine in an interview. An amazing debut album, which would only be exceeded by one other Metal Church album. Two live favorites of Metal Church, Ton of Bricks and Start the Fire, open the A-side before the emotional Watch the Children Pray follows. The B-side begins with a totally different atmosphere. The dark and psycho take us into the realm of horror. Beyond the Line of Death is closer to thrash than Metal Church were ever before. This album has it all: power, variety, high quality. A power metal classic that hardly anyone could try and push off the throne. Maybe Sabotage, Hall of the Mountain King? Thanks for watching.